This conference will now be recorded.
The today topic is chronic osteomyelitis. Can you hear me? Okay, okay. As you all know, osteomyelitis is nothing but infection of a bone. I mean, you have already learned about acute osteomyelitis and all, so there is no need to explain in detail. And this infection is limited to single bone, or it may involve marrow, cortex, periosteum, and surrounding soft tissue as well. And coming to the classification based on duration of symptoms, it's acute, subacute, and chronic. Acute is less than 3 weeks, and subacute it's from 3 weeks to several months, and chronic is more than several months. But mostly subacute and chronic, the definition changes. Sometimes, mostly they tell us chronic is more than 3 weeks, and mechanism of infection, it may be exogenous or hematogenous, and based on host response, it's pyogenic or non-pyogenic. And as per books, if infection of bone is more than 3 weeks, then it is called as chronic osteomyelitis. And the causes are trauma causing open fractures. Open fractures, the infection directly enters into the bone. And post-operative, if the post-operative care is not good, and osteomyelitis with chronic etiology like TB and Brodie's abscess. Brodie's abscess is nothing but subacute osteomyelitis, which is confined to the metaphysis. And if it is prolonged during prolonged period, then it may lead to chronic osteomyelitis and fungal osteomyelitis. And in chronic osteomyelitis, it's very difficult to eradicate completely because the entire bone is involved. And systemic symptoms are most commonly seen in acute osteomyelitis. In chronic osteomyelitis, the systemic symptoms may subside, but one or more foci containing purulent material is present in the bone. So it's very difficult to eradicate. And coming to the pathology, what happens in chronic osteomyelitis is, in any infection, as you know, there is inflammatory reaction in the bone, and so this leads to debris, and this debris enters into the blood vessels, and it leads to necrosis of the bone. See, if you see in this picture, there is a necrosis of bone, which leads to loss of blood supply. Here, if you see, there is loss of blood supply, and it leads to death of the bone. The dead bone is called a sequestrum. So, to prevent the infection from further spreading to entire bone, the surrounding bone, what it does is, to wall off the infection, a reactive new bone formation occurs around the dead bone, and it is called as involucrum. See, first necrosis occurs, and necrosis leads to sequestrum formation. And next, there is a stage of new bone formation, which is called as involucrum. This involucrum, the main purpose of involucrum is to keep the sequestrum inside with the persistent, to seal off the sequestrum. But as it is an incomplete process, the pus inside the bone, it presents as discharging sinus, and the pus comes out of these discharging sinuses. Are called as cloaca. And what is the main hallmark of chronic osteomyelitis? It's infected dead bone with compromised envelope soft tissue. And the infected foci within the bone are surrounded by sclerotic, thick avascular bone covered by thickened periosteum and scarred muscle and subcutaneous tissue. So as this avascular envelope of scar tissue is present, even systemic antibiotics doesn't work for chronic osteomyelitis because as the bone is completely involved. And even secondary infections are more common in chronic osteomyelitis. So even if you take the culture from the sinus tract also, it's not enough to know the organism. We have to go for bone biopsy, which is very confirmatory, which organism caused the exact osteomyelitis. And multiple organisms grow from the cultures, even if you take the sinus tract. And clinically, they present as with discharging sinus, which is the most characteristic feature. Pain and swelling you can see in any inflammations. So with this you can't differentiate. But discharging sinus, which is adherent to the bone, is hallmark of chronic osteomyelitis. And due to this discharging sinus, which is adherent, there may be deformity, bone thickening, and as the joint is involved, joint stiffness may be present, and shortening of limb is present. As the bone becomes weak, there may be pathological fracture as well. And rare causes, it may cause sinus tract malignancy in chronic cases. And the classification is Ciani and Maeder classification. In this, there are 4 types. It is mainly based on the involvement of the bone. See, in first type, which is medullary, only medulla is involved. The infection is confined to medulla. And in second type, there is superficial cortical defect is present, like cortical surface, only cortical surface is involved. And in third type, there is cortical as well as some of the medulla is involved. But the stability won't be compromised in this type. But whereas in fourth type, all the 3, 1, 2, and 3 are present, and even the stability of the bone is spared. And what are the differential diagnosis of osteomyelitis? TB osteomyelitis, but you can differentiate it with watery discharge is present. And the sinus with the margin of blue color is present in TB. And Ewing sarcoma. Ewing sarcoma also presents as, when we see the clinical picture, it may also be present as chronic osteomyelitis, but here the discharging sinuses won't be present in Ewing sarcoma, and it resembles infection, which we have to be more careful. But in biopsy, we can differentiate between Ewing sarcoma and chronic osteomyelitis. And any soft tissue infection also may present as osteomyelitis, but in X-ray we can see if there is bone involvement, then it is osteomyelitis. If there is no bone involvement, then we can consider it as soft tissue infection. And coming to the diagnosis part, clinical, laboratory, and imaging studies all should be taken, but the gold standard is biopsy, as we have already discussed. And in clinical examination, what we have to see in clinical examination, the integrity of skin and soft tissue. As there are sinuses, the integrity is lost, and area of tenderness and bone stability we have to assess. If there are any pathological fractures or any defect of bone, we have to see. And another important thing is neurovascular status of the limb has to be seen. And coming to the laboratory investigations, we have to go for blood counts, ESR, and CRP. And coming to the imaging, which is very important. If you see in this X-ray, we can see there is cortical destruction of the bone, and there is a sequestrum, which is a dead bone, and it is surrounded by sclerotic. Here, see sclerotic area of living bone. This is called as involucrum. See cortical destruction, and the periosteal reaction is also seen. Periosteal reaction. Then sequestrum deformity and sclerotic bone. And sinography is done to see the extent of sinus, whether the sinus is confined only superficially or it is extending to the bone. So with sinography, we can differentiate it with, soft tissue infection and chronic osteomyelitis. Coming to the CT scan, the extent of damage is seen in CT scan. Cortical bone and surrounding soft tissue. So especially in identifying sequestra. And MRI. The extent of pathological insult of soft tissues can be seen in MRI. In CT scan only we can see the extent of bone involvement, but soft tissue involvement is not seen. But here in MRI, we can see the soft tissue involvement. A well-defined rim of high signal intensity surrounded by focus of active disease is seen. It is called as rim sign. And coming to the treatment part, surgery is the mainstay of treatment because antibiotics won't work. I mean, purely antibiotics won't work. So first, antibiotics are given only to prevent spread, but not to eradicate the infection, like the chronic osteomyelitis. So first, antibiotics are given for 10 days, and then followed by surgery. In surgery, sequestrectomy and saucerization are done. And what we do in sequestrectomy? And one thing we have to do is sinus tracts are injected with methylene blue 24 hours prior to surgery to make them easier to locate and excise, because sometimes the sinus tracts, when there are multiple sinus tracts, we often miss them during surgery. So it's better to inject them with methylene blue. And coming to the technique, so we have to expose the infected area of the bone and excise all. First, initially, we have to excise all the sinus tracts completely. Then the indurated periosteum. Immediately when you remove all the sinus tracts, first what you see on the surface of the bone is periosteum. So first you have to elevate the periosteum 1.3 to 2.5 centimeters on each side, and with using the drill, a cortical window is created, and then all the sequestract with purulent material is removed, this is known as sequestrectomy. And if sclerotic bone seals off the cavity with the medullary canal, open the canal in both directions and allow the blood vessels to grow into the cavity. Like you have to remove the sequestrum, and then if it is involving the medullary cavity, have even go into the medullary cavity. And after removing all the material, there will be the dead space, which you can later close the dead space by using various techniques. The techniques are like first, next I'll deal with the techniques which you have to close them. Immediately after the surgery, you have to give 6 weeks of intravenous antibiotics, and the limb is splinted, pathological fractures. So, and during sequestration, has to be closed. This has to be, so the techniques for dead space closure are bone grafting with primary or secondary closure, and antibiotic beads as temporary for dead space. And later we can go for antibiotic beads are polymethyl methylacryl. If the dead large, then we can go for local muscle plaques and skin grafting without a program. And muscles, myocutaneous, osseous, and osteocutaneous flaps can also be used. If the dead space is very large, then we have to go for. So one technique which you all have to know is Fabinho technique, the dead space closure technique. In this technique, the first you have to debridement is done, all dead tissue. When there is dead space, local debridement is done, and we have to wait for few days for granulation tissue to occur. Later, after granulation tissue occurs, then we have to go for grafting. That is, the cancellous, multiple cancellous bone pieces are taken and are placed into the dead space. And after few days of this bone grafting, then wound coverage is done. In some cases, when we wait to see, even without wound coverage, spontaneous epithelialization occurs. In cases without spontaneous epithelialization, then we can go for skin grafts, myocutaneous flaps, muscle pedicle flaps, or free flaps. And these are the surgical techniques for chronic osteomyelitis. And coming to the complications, osteomyelitis may cause joint stiffness, shortening of limb, muscle contracture, pathological fracture, sinus tract malignancy, and in rare cases, amyloidosis. And thank you.